Cemented in pop culture as one of the most secluded and high-security prisons of the last 250 years, Alcatraz is not a place you would have wanted to find yourself in. Based on a small island off the shores of San Francisco, California, the Alcatraz complex was used as a military base, a military prison, and a federal prison between 1937 and 1963. With such a long and interesting history, several mysteries surrounding the ex-prison have cropped up over the years. So today, here at Unexplained Mysteries, we'll be taking a look at 3 Alcatraz mysteries. Radar Discovery Alcatraz's structures were first constructed as a military outpost, hoping to be a line of defense from any potential invading forces. Few people know of its original role, and many aspects of the island's early history are overshadowed by its more recent past. However, in 2019, a group of archaeologists discovered evidence of hidden military structures beneath the federal penitentiary to create a map of the underground regions below the island. What they found was amazing, an incredibly preserved fortification dating back to the 19th century. The discovery adds evidence to the idea that although most of Alcatraz's 19th century fortifications were demolished in the early 20th century, some of it still lies intact, effectively working as a time capsule to the long-since-gone period of Alcatraz's early history. An archaeologist from Bimington University stated, "These remains are so well preserved and so close to the surface, they weren't erased from the island, they're just right beneath your feet." Before mid-17th century America, the island that would eventually house the infamous Al Capone was little more than a stretch of desolate land in the middle of the San Francisco Bay. That eventually changed when the U.S. stationed the island as a defensive outpost, leading the island to have several structures erected on top of it. Due to its remote and isolated nature, it was difficult for the island to stay modernized in regards to weapons and artillery. Towards the dawn of the 19th century, Alcatraz's equipment was already obsolete, leading to the dissolvement as a military outcrop. Once the now famous penitentiary was built in the 20th century, the old fortifications were believed to have been totally replaced. However, these new findings state that some of the original buildings are still preserved beneath the island's current surface. Using clever radar technology that measures the wavelengths of signals that bounce back from underground, researchers were able to peer into the subterranean world below and discovered that a rich complex of underground structures has been lying hidden for centuries. This method of archaeology means that teams can easily map out areas without the need to disturb the ground or potentially damage any finds that may lie below. Without any manual excavation, the team of this 2019 study were able to find a labyrinth of subterranean structures. These safe ways of underground mapping are vital for sensitive research areas such as Alcatraz. John Martini, author of the study as well as an Alcatraz historian, stated, "This in fact strengthens what a number of historians and archaeologists have long suspected. On an isolated island, there are only a number of places you can construct. Could there be more secrets to uncover underneath the surface of Alcatraz? What other government work could have been lost to the past? Below the surface, Alcatraz is still full of mysteries. There's still a whole lot to be learned." Man claims to have escaped from Alcatraz. Most people know of an escape attempt from Alcatraz. The subject of one of cinema's most famous movies, the 1962 escape, has been shrouded in mystery from the get-go. The 3 men involved, John Anglin, Clarence Anglin, and Frank Morris, were inmates at the penitentiary for their involvement in a bank robbery. Through their ingenuity, the trio showed the world that the high-security prison was not escape-proof after all. Supposedly, the men dug a small tunnel out of their cells using sharpened spoons as their only tools. The effort took months to complete, and the men crafted a raft out of their raincoats and set off on the choppy San Francisco waters in the middle of the night. Despite their escape, the men were never seen again, leaving many to wonder if any of the escapees made it across safely. For decades, people have argued for and against the survival of the 3 criminals, with many believing that the swim across the bay would have been impossible for the 3 men to complete, yet people do swim the journey today. However, in 2018, an interesting development came to light thanks to the San Francisco Police Department. In 2013, the San Francisco television station KPIX received a letter from an unknown sender, claiming to be from the prisoner John Anglin. The now public letter is an incredibly interesting read, as it includes some closure on the famous mystery, if it is to be believed. It begins with, "My name is John Anglin. I escaped from Alcatraz in June 1962. Yes, we all made it that night, but barely." The letter goes on to explain what happened to the other two inmates. According to the letter, the other Anglin brother, Clarence, passed away in 2008, while Frank Morris passed away in 2005, supporting the idea that the trio lived on into old age. That said, the letter is not all positive. John Anglin goes on to state that he has cancer and also tries to bargain with the police in exchange for medical care, stating that if you announce on TV that I will be promised to just go to jail for no more than a year and get medical attention, I will write back to let you know exactly where I am. While somewhat bone-chilling, the letter's authenticity has obviously come into question. It took the police 5 years to make the existence of the letter known to the public, and it was sent to the FBI for analysis on authenticity. Interestingly, in comparisons between the handwriting of the 3 inmates to that of the submitted letter, the results were inconclusive, according to the U.S. Marshals. Relatives of the Anglin brothers stated that they would find roses supposedly left by John and Clarence for years after their escape, including their signatures. So what could it be? Is this letter just some prankster with too much time? Or could it be the last contact made by one of the United States' most wanted men? Is Alcatraz haunted? Creepy ruins, abandoned prison, and scary island. It's fair to say that Alcatraz has all the possibilities to become a haunted hotspot. With centuries worth of history, by the early 20th century, Alcatraz was not a place you'd hope to end up at. But is the isolated island really haunted? There are many stories from the island's time as a penitentiary. Supposedly, many prisoners still walk the island searching for retribution from their mistreatment at the island prison. Punishments at Alcatraz were harsh, and those found breaking rules were stripped naked and forced to be in a cell with no lights, sink, or mattress. To add to this, their only toilet was a hole in the ground. It's believed that many spirits can't move on from their final resting place. The stripped cell in particular sees lots of ghostly activity. One particular cell of note is cell 14D, the so-called dreaded cell. The story goes that this cell is the location of where one inmate, after screaming that some kind of creature was going to end his life, actually passed away. Through the night, the man claimed that something with glowing eyes was after him, and in the morning the man was found by guards, no longer alive, as well as a sudden change in energy upon entering the room. All of the cell blocks of the prison are full of activity. Blocks A and B often see reports of ghostly crying and wailing, perhaps the cries of prisoners who are tied to the island forever. Block C was the subject of much interest when a psychic visited the island and claimed to have come into contact with a spirit named Butcher. Prison records show that a man named Albie Moldovitz, a hitman who went by the name Butcher, passed away in Block C. The most famous inmate to ever step foot on Alcatraz Island was Al Capone. The gangster spent his last years alive in the high-security prison and eventually passed away from an STI that went untreated. Al Capone was noted to have played banjo with the prison band, often fearing for his own safety if he spent time. The communal prison yard. Capone managed to receive permission to practice in the shower room. Scarily, many people have reported that they have heard banjo playing through the prison walls, specifically coming from the shower room. Even those who are not familiar with Capone or Alcatraz's history have stated that strange banjo music could be heard in the prison without any identifiable source. Perhaps the ghosts of Alcatraz prison wander the island in the hope that they might be released. What do you make of these Alcatraz mysteries? Plain mysteries interest many of us, and over the years there's been no shortage of them. The strange story of Pan Am Flight 914 has been shared for years times, with many websites calling it one of the biggest aviation mysteries, claiming that even experts are stumped and can't seem to explain what happened. This story goes that a plane took off from New York back in 1955, having 57 passengers on board. It was reported, though, that the plane never made it to its destination and actually went missing for 37 years. People soon started to put forward their theories for what happened, but it seemed that the plane vanished into thin air. Things got even stranger when the plane allegedly reappeared and landed in Miami over 3 decades later. One of the most common theories put forward is that the plane went through some kind of time portal. Interestingly, this story allegedly had people that were able to back up this story, with one being that of an air traffic controlman. Although this story sounds incredible, the claims are rooted in fiction, with the story being made up by an online news source. Just because this story turned out to be fake, though, there's still many plane mysteries that are waiting to be solved. Perhaps some of the most interesting ones are those involving UFOs. We are told that the majority of UFOs can be explained, with officials saying they are just weather balloons, natural phenomena, military activity, birds, hot air balloons, or camera anomalies. But yet there seems to be many pilots that have come forward with their own encounters, with many of them stating that they had no idea what the craft was they just witnessed. One American Airlines pilot reported seeing a dish-shaped craft, and noted that it overtook his plane and covered the curvature of the Earth within seconds. He went on to say that the craft was easily hitting a couple thousand miles per hour, and noted that there's nothing in the United States military that's able to reach those kinds of speeds. It's interesting when people like pilots go on record in detail of their encounters. After all, these are the people that spend the most amount of time in the sky, and it's also their job to be able to identify man-made crafts. So when they turn around and say they're not sure of what it is they've just seen, some say it adds credibility to the sighting. One of the most interesting accounts comes from that of Captain Thomas Mantell. Captain Thomas Mantell was an experienced pilot, boasting a flight history of 2,167 hours in the air. Many of these hours have been served during World War II, where he fought for the Allies in the Battle of Normandy. Was rewarded with the Distinguished Flying Cross and Air Medal for his heroism. In 1947, he returned to Louisville and joined the new Kentucky Air National Guard as a flight leader. However, less than a year into the new job, Mantell's career ended in tragedy when he passed away while in pursuit of an unknown flying object. The object was seen by several of Mantell's colleagues. Base Commander Colonel Guy Hicks reported that it was very wide and around 1/4 the size of the full moon, while observers at the Clinton County Airfield described it as the following: having the appearance of a flaming red cone trailing a gaseous green mist with a speed greater than 500 miles per hour. It was also seen by the Kentucky State Police, who contacted Captain Mantell, requesting for him to investigate the object. Alongside 2 colleagues, Mantell set off in pursuit of the large white object. When his colleagues informed him they were going to retreat and level their altitude to try and see the object more clearly, Mantell ignored them, pursuing the object in a steep climb and at a high altitude. Unfortunately, while at this altitude, Mantell blacked out from the lack of oxygen, and he and his plane crashed at a farm south of Franklin on the Tennessee-Kentucky state line. Mantell passed away on impact. Mantell's death was tragic, but also a monumental occasion in UFO history. Before this point, there had only been a few cases reporting unidentified flying objects, and most of these cases had been dismissed by the public as fans of the delusional sightings of insane men and women. However, Mantell was a highly respected pilot, and the fact he'd laid down his own life to determine what this object was resulted in an increased public concern about UFO phenomena. The official response from the Air Force line when Mantell worked was that the object he'd seen was actually Venus. However, this theory has been attacked by others who argue that on the date of Mantell's death, Venus was only 33 degrees above the horizon, and thus would not have been visible to Mantell. An official investigation was later opened named Project Bluebird that concluded that the object Mantell had been chasing was a skyhook balloon and part of a top-secret project that neither Mantell nor his colleagues would have known about. These skyhook balloons were being used by the Navy to measure radiation levels in the upper atmosphere. The skyhook balloon finding has largely been accepted. However, there's still some skeptics. For example, Eyewitness Glenn Mays insists that Mantell was the victim of an attack, as he swears he saw Mantell's plane explode in midair as if the result of a bullet. His argument is supported by James Dusler, who states that the damage pattern on Mantell's plane was not consistent with an aircraft crashing at high speeds, but instead one that belly flopped into the clearing, as if it was shot down. Even those that say that when Mantell's body was found it was riddled with strange holes, which might have been bullet holes. Whether you accept the official line that Mantell was chasing after a skyhook balloon or believe he was the victim of a weapon, what Mantell was chasing that day remains a mystery. So what do you guys make of this plane mystery? What do you think happened to Mantell? And do you think that he was pursuing an unidentified flying object or a balloon? Within the past century, there's been an interesting increase in the number of otherworldly discoveries made in the perpetual permafrost of the steppe. It seems as though ever-changing climate is melting away the ice that once kept these prehistoric beings preserved in antiquity, but is now opening up a mysterious time capsule ready to reveal secrets from the Earth's past. Who knows what we may encounter in the future with the issue of global warming continually looming over our heads. Whatever we might find in the years to come will remain a mystery until time decides to reveal it to us. So today, here at Unexplained Mysteries, we'll be taking a look at 3 creatures which have been found frozen in ice. Kolyma woolly rhinoceros in 2007. Gold miners on the Kolyma River in northeastern Siberia made a jaw-dropping discovery. Instead of the gold they were seeking, they uncovered the almost wholly preserved cadaver of a woolly rhinoceros, which had been concealed from human eyes for tens of thousands of years. The Coelodonta antiquitatus, known commonly as the woolly rhinoceros, which inhabited Europe and northern Asia throughout the Pleistocene era up until the last glacial period. Before this breathtaking discovery, only fragmented evidence of the woolly rhinoceros was available for analysis and speculation. Never before had such a well-preserved body of one of these amazing beasts been found. The entire left side of the rhinoceros body was in almost perfect condition. The left side of the body still had the skin attached on its ear, head, and even both fore and hind legs. Even its fragile skull survived, its 2 horns and jaw still attached. Unfortunately, the body's right side wasn't as shielded from the elements. The right side of the body lacks a skull, patches of skin, and even legs, which notably appear to have been torn off the body. Whilst it is possible that this rhino was hunted by humans, it is unlikely. Humans hunted for mammoths, but they tended to scavenge the bones of and use them as tools instead of outwardly attacking them. Other remains of the Coelodonta antiquitatus have been and continue to be remarkably rare and valuable. Only 3 other separate remains of these woolly rhinos have ever been found. The Kolyma River woolly rhinoceros is the 4th in a tiny handful of discoveries. The first proper carcass of this rhino was unearthed in 1929 and currently resides in the Polish Museum of Natural History in Krakow. It is a femur rhinoceros with both horns missing. The second found mummy currently resides in the Ukrainian History Museum, and the third was found in 1972 near the settlement of Cherapsha. The found specimen was a near-complete skeleton of the animal. The skin and pelt on its leg remained partially intact, but the body was in poor condition. As one might expect of an archaeological mummy sitting in ice for thousands of years, the organs of the Kolyma woolly rhinoceros were sadly lost to time. All organs but the stomach and intestines, which upon pollen and spore analysis, revealed that the rhinoceros was a mega-herbivore and would have feasted on a steady diet of sagebrush and various grasses. Thanks to the wonder of scientific DNA sequencing, researchers decipher that these woolly rhinos had a steady and secure population until the very end of the last glacial period. Scientists speculate that the sudden change in climate after the Ice Age ended was the main contributing factor that led to their extinction. The woolly rhinos were, as their name suggests, evolved to withstand freezing temperatures and not heat. Yukagir bison. Yakutia is an enigmatic place, tucked away in the far corner of Russia by the Kolyma region. Many astonishing findings happen there. About 15 frozen mummified carcasses, skeletal remains, and corpses of ancient, now extinct creatures have been found in the area. This is, of course, due to the fact that there are many areas of permafrost in the natural landscape. Regardless, it must never get boring to live in a place renowned for extraordinary and significant archaeological and paleontological discoveries. The Yukagir bison, named appropriately because it is one of the many creatures found in the Yakutia region, was officially found in the summer of 2011 on the shore of Lake Chakalak. It is the mummified body of an ancient steppe bison. These steppe bison dwelled in most areas of the prehistoric world, from the British Isles and even the north of America. The main theory behind their extinction is simple. They were steadily replaced by the modern European bison, and the climate changed too quickly for them to evolve. An analysis of the bison's body samples showed that it was a 4-year-old male whose remains have been dated back to 10,500 years ago. It seems as though the steppe bison had more in common to the European bison than the American bison, but shared common traits with both of them, such as body structure and body shapes. Despite being under the age of 5, the steppe bison was already at the height of a fully grown and matured American bison. This suggests that the steppe bison at their prime could weigh well over 1,000 kilograms. The Yukagir bison earned its place in the Archaeological Hall of Fame by being the best found specimen of these creatures to date. Its organs remained inside its body for over 10,000 years, giving humanity a chance to properly study the intricate details of the lifestyles led by these fascinating beings. The collection curator and manager of the Man of Sight in South Dakota has stated that the mummy of this bison was preserved so well that it earned a record for the level of its preservation. The specific cause of the Yukagir bison passing away is speculated to be starvation. Steppe bison have healthy layers of fat surrounding their abdomen, but the Yukagir bison lacks this. Other remains of steppe bison have been found in the past, notably in Alaska in 1934 and 1936, respectively. But these were only mummified legs, hooves, and bones of steppe bison. The Yukagir bison is the first of its kind found sufficiently preserved and mostly whole. The data collected from both the Yukagir bison as well as the few and scarce remains of other steppe bison suggest that they passed away in recent antiquity, about 8,000 years ago. This means that they surely survived the Pleistocene to Holocene periods of time, and though their numbers dwindled in some places, their population was kept stable until a sudden unexpected decrease in suitable habitats for them in the pastures of Siberia. It appears the change in early Holocene climate was a significant reason for their demise. Another reasoning behind their extinction is the fact humans bred them with aurochs, which are also now extinct to produce what we know as the European bison. The Yucca mammoth, yet another mysterious discovery made in the area of Yakutia. This magnificent creature was found in 2010. Yucca the mammoth was named after the Yukagir people who found her. This woolly mammoth carcass was found in the area by the Laptev Sea. The site, however, was left untouched until 2012, when P. Lazarev and S. Grigoriev of the Sarkar Academy arrived to take a look at Yucca. Due to Yucca's carcass being near the shore, much of the bluff was washed away during that time despite a moderately tame water level, which negatively impacted the research which could be rendered on the carcass. Yucca spent those 2 years in Yakuza's natural refrigerator called a Leednik Glacier. When the remains were found, they were hanging off a melting ledge of a slope composed of loose sediment. The samples taken from her bones and skull revealed that Yucca was alive 30,000 years ago, and the analysis of her tusks and teeth suggested her to be about 6 to 8 years old before she passed away. Old fossils and frozen remains of mammoths have been historically so easy to find in Yakutia that the local folklore's various legends link mammoths to water in spiritual ways, portraying them as water guardians and spirits. As Yucca herself was found in water, we can see why the ancient populace of Yakutia would think mammoths to be sacred spirits with how often they would find their bones and remains. A popular theory regarding Yucca's loss of life is that the mammoth was attacked by lions, but there is little evidence to prove this. Human interference with Yucca, however, is possible. A 40-inch incision was found in Yucca's lumbar, caused by a sharp instrument. A considerable amount of her organs were missing. The skull, pelvis, bones, and ribs had been removed and placed around the carcass. The burial place of Euchre was most likely in shallow fresh water with a steady stream, with the environment slowing the process of decay. Scholar Daniel C. Fisher explained in his studies that the butchery of mammoths was commonplace and ancient humans might have used this technique as a way of storing food at a low temperature. Who knows what other immaculate beings we'll discover in trapped ice? For all we know, the thawing permafrost might reveal secrets to the most prominent speculations and questions we've been eager to find out. It could confirm or break theories in archaeology and paleontology. Or will our future discoveries be catastrophic, unleashing horrors from before humans walked the earth? There is no way to know for certain what awaits us in the melting ice, but we can rest assured that whatever we find, it will be fascinating. What do you make of these creatures found frozen in ice? Back in 2016, mysterious lights were seen in the sky above Turkey. What was strange, though, was the way social media dealt with this. Usually when things make the news, it will trend on sites like Twitter, and this is what happened with the lights above Turkey. However, some noted that when they refreshed the site, the hashtags couldn't be found, with some even saying that their tweets had been deleted. This then caused various people to give their opinions on what happened. The hashtag was named UFO Attack to Turkey, and this was because of the various lights that were witnessed. Some described the UFOs being a series of glowing lights that stayed in a strict formation, while others said the lights actually belonged to one craft, saying that this was in the shape of a triangle or a boomerang. Those who allegedly saw the light said that it moved slowly in the sky, without making any noises. Not long after this, eyewitnesses started to post their photographs on Twitter, which in turn caused people from around the world to question what was happening. This caused the hashtag to go viral, with hundreds of thousands of people talking about it and retweeting and liking the images that were posted. As mentioned, though, what was strange about this is that many of these images soon started to vanish from the site, with accounts being blocked and others who engaged in the conversation being silenced. It came as no surprise that people wanted answers for what was happening. One user said the following: "So, are we just going to ignore the UFO that was seen by millions in Turkey last night?" While another said the following: "My location is Ankara. What is this? Is it really a UFO? I'm so afraid and I hope this is a joke." Theorists then started to say that this event was very much real and that it was witnessed by many people in the area, and this in turn caused sites like Twitter to censor the images of the supposed UFOs, with even the hashtag being removed shortly after. One angry user said this: "I like how Twitter deletes most of the UFO attack to Turkey tweets and have it not trending anymore." With another saying the following: "Many of the tweets with videos or pictures of a UFO attack to Turkey would be sent, then immediately deleted. Heavy censorship. We may never know." One person went on to say the following about the whole event: "This is what makes me mad when it comes to these sorts of events. Something strange will happen that gets seen by many people. Then they just delete it or make no announcement, as if people are just going to forget about it within the next 10 minutes. It's really annoying, as people clearly saw something. If UFOs aren't real, then why are they so quick to take down stories like this? If these were just drones or military planes, why censor them so quickly? The government can't do basic things, but when it comes to UFOs, they act straight away. Perhaps that's where their priorities lay." It was later announced that a Twitter account was behind the reported sightings, but this doesn't explain those who came forward with their encounter, with some saying this was just a front to stop people talking about it. Another person who is in the area said the following: "This people at the moment saying this is just made up, all that is drones, but it's not. Whatever this thing is, it's large and seems to just be sitting in the sky." Others in the area have reported that strange lights have been seen in the area for the past few days, and that whatever these things are, they keep returning. It's unlikely to be the military. These things are too big and they're just sitting there making no noise. Very strange stuff. As of right now, the event has pretty much been forgotten about and brushed aside, but it seems like Turkey is no stranger to UFO activity. One of the most famous cases was that of the 1976 Tehran UFO incident. This UFO incident was based on a case that was carried out by two planes that belonged to the Iranian army. In this chase, the pilots of the Iranian army tried to shoot down the objects using their weapons, but this proved useless. Interestingly, every time they tried to do this, they stopped working as they approached the object. In 1976, the Imperial Air Force was informed of different reports and sightings of strange objects in the sky. This was alarming to all those who witnessed it, since it was a never-before-seen object with a shape of a sphere. This strange object was also firing out multiple strange lines, something that eyewitnesses couldn't explain. After hundreds of calls from civilians, it was decided to send an F-4 Phantom for the purpose of investigating what was happening. This aircraft took off with the sole purpose of intercepting the unidentified flying object. Since the pilots managed to locate the object, they had orders to attack it. But strangely, when being around 50 kilometers away from the foreign object, the Iranian craft began to present some failures, and this stopped the military from being able to communicate with each other. The pilots decided to return to the base, noticing that when they got away from the object, they got back all the normal functions of the plane. As expected, a second Iranian plane took off to identify the unknown object. Unlike the first encounter, the mysterious object began to make its way towards the plane, almost as if inspecting it. The pilot said the craft in question was very bright and that as it got closer, the brightness of the object stopped them from getting a good look at it. Not only did this craft come close, but it was reported that it released a drone-like object. They subserved the plane and then returned back to the original object. The pilots felt like they were going to be attacked, so they decided to fight back. Once again, they noticed that the weapons panel was completely inactive, which was alarming when they were in the sky with something they'd never seen before. However, they received no attacks, and it seemed as if the craft was just interested in the plane. One of the smaller objects descended into the desert, and the Iranian plane was ordered to proceed. The next day of search was conducted for evidence of the sighting, and whatever was found remains a secret. This has been recognized as one of the most reliable events or encounters with unidentified flying objects, due to the number of witnesses who were able to observe what happened. The main witnesses were different pilots of the Iranian army and also officials who were based on the ground. So what do you make of the UFOs seen above Turkey? And why do you think Twitter was deleting tweets and removing hashtags? Every year, many people witness unidentified flying objects in the sky. The majority of these eventually get explained, but there are some that remain a mystery and get labeled by UFO researchers as the real deal. What's interesting, though, is when professionals like airline pilots, astronauts, and even the police detail their encounters. People give these types of sightings more credibility, as these people, for the most part, are said to be level-headed. However, one Marshall County sheriff was left confused after he encountered some mysterious lights in the sky. The story begins in 1979, when a county sheriff was on patrol at 1:40 a.m. As he was driving down Highway 220, he claims that he drove into a ball of white light. He claimed the object was very bright, measuring in at 8 to 12 inches in diameter and hovering roughly 3 to 4 feet off the ground. Johnson said this in a police interview, going on to say that the objects had edges that were very defined. As the sheriff drove towards the light, something happened, as the next thing he remembers is waking up in a nearby ditch. When he made it back to his car, though, it was obvious that something had happened, as the windshield and one of the lights were smashed, along with the radio antenna being bent back. Interestingly, the watch on his wrist and also the clock on his car were 14 minutes behind. The news soon reached the media, where various articles were put out about the event, even calling the sheriff's car the UFO car. The sheriff's car can be seen at the Marshall County Museum. It often gets displayed around the country, with the story being retold. So what actually happened? UFO researchers have labeled the incident as one of the most important UFO cases. And this is because it's not just a story. There's actual physical evidence to back up the claims, something that doesn't happen very often in the world of ufology. The story goes that after the encounter, Sheriff Johnson didn't want to be contacted, and even went on to distance himself from his friends and family, living a quiet life and not wanting to talk about the events that unfolded that night. As it turns out, though, this isn't the case, and various people have managed to get hold of him in recent years. When asked about what happened that night and whether it was a UFO, the sheriff said the following: "People don't really ask me about that anymore. I remember looking up at the sky and thinking what happened. After that, I pretty much got on with my life." Although he noted that at the time it was a very big deal, and many people wanted to hear his story, from news stations to national papers, at the time everyone was interested in what he made contact with that night. Perhaps, though, one of the strangest things about this case is how he just doesn't seem to care. Although the experience had changed his life because people would constantly ask him what happened, it was as if he didn't even care. Some UFO researchers have said it's strange how something so mysterious can happen to someone, yet they don't really seem to care. After all, if this happened to most people, they'd want answers for what they made contact with. He's even said himself that he lost time after hitting the light. He said that he's had people turn up at his house and speculate about what it was, going on to say that he usually just sips a drink and waits until they go away. He's not against the idea of it being an unidentified flying object, or even linked to extraterrestrials, but said that he wouldn't speculate about what happened that day. He said the following: "I saw a ball of light. I drove towards it and suddenly it was in the car with me. It's unexplainable and will remain so. I'm happy with my mental stability." Interestingly, though, other UFO researchers defended his outlook and said that many people who encounter things like UFOs have this outlook, saying that in a way it's a coping mechanism. Those who encounter UFOs behave differently. Some become obsessed with what happened and want answers for what they saw, while others question if what they saw was even there in the first place, while some just brush it aside and move on with their life, knowing that there's a high possibility that they'll never truly know what they encountered. The sheriff did say that at most it's just an interesting story to tell at the bar. His account, though, does seem to stand out, with researchers saying they don't think there's ever been someone who's had such a close encounter and doesn't seem to care about what it was. After all, driving into a bright light, being knocked out for several minutes, and waking up outside of your car with your watch not working is the stuff of fiction. Yet this individual had proof this happened. Skeptics, though, have said they have another idea, and instead he may have accidentally crashed the car, and as a way of covering for himself made up the story of the UFO. In a way, this makes much more sense. And some have said it's caused them to say this because of his outlook, saying that if this happened to anyone else, there would be a part of them that would want answers. However, others came to his defense and said that we all handle these types of things different, saying that he might just be in denial. Close encounters are perhaps one of the most interesting topics when talking about UFOs. It seems so out there, yet so many have detailed similar encounters. The question is, if they were lying, why would people go through the trouble of coming forward with their story, knowing that they'll be judged? It's an interesting topic that many still don't understand. At this moment in time, we can only speculate. UFO researchers have said, though, it's one of the best close encounter experiences, and that it's likely that we'll never truly understand what happened that night. So what do you guys make of this interesting UFO case? Do you think the sheriff did drive into a bright light and lose time? Perhaps this was a type of abduction encounter, and the bright light caused him to lose time? Also, how would you react if this happened to you? Would you be as relaxed as a sheriff? The vast depths of the sea house many fantastical beings, and nowhere else on Earth could you find so many different species, with such close evolutionary ties to the prehistoric creatures that roamed the Earth with the dinosaurs. One such specimen is the shark. Sharks are known for their carnivorous ferocity and their multiple rows of teeth that allow them to mercilessly hunt their prey. However, at the same time, a certain mystery surrounds this both beloved and feared species. So today, here at Unexplained Mysteries, we'll be taking a look at 3 instances where researchers realized that perhaps we do not know as much about sharks as we sometimes think. Researchers keep changing their mind on how big Megalodon was. The prehistoric Megalodon was the massive great-grandfather of the sharks that lurk among beaches today. Researchers studying fossilized skeletons of the megalodon agreed that it was undoubtedly one of the largest shark species to ever roam the ocean. However, they were previously unable to agree upon exactly how large this creature was until a recent study answered these questions once and for all. The massive beast lived from around 23 million years ago until 3 million years ago, and fossilized remains of its teeth, which are as large as human hands, have finally cracked the code in allowing scientists to definitively estimate the truly massive proportions of the megalodon. Sharks' multiple rows of teeth mean that they frequently shed them, sometimes as often as once a week, and the next tooth in the row moves forward to take its place. Since the teeth grow proportionately with the shark, and on average a shark will lose 2,000 teeth in its lifetime, paleontologists at the University of Bristol and Swansea University were able to take rare fossilized megalodon teeth and compare them with teeth of modern-day species to chart a growth curve for the ancient beast. The growth curve generated mathematical calculations which were used to determine the previously undetermined proportions of the megalodon, and these proportions were mammoth indeed. The shark would have reached adult size at around 18 meters, with a tail length of an average of 4 meters and weighing upwards of 48 tons. Clocking in at more than twice the size of a modern-day great white shark, the megalodon is by far the largest shark species to have existed. Its dorsal fin alone would have been as tall as the average adult male, and the bite force behind those multiple rows of teeth was estimated to be over 10 tons, dwarfing the great whites of only 2 tons. Serrated bite marks on the fossilized bones of animals and fortunate enough to be preyed to the megalodon act as a testament to the incredible strength of those jaws. The megalodon, meaning giant tooth, is aptly named, with teeth over 3 times the size of the great white shark, which is its closest modern-day relative. There is no doubt that those massive jaws ruled the sea in its time. Great white mysteriously vanished from satellites. Shark researchers have been diligently working for years to dispel shark prejudices largely attributed to media such as Jaws and Shark Week. Sharks are actually incredibly predictable beasts that have been swimming in our midst since ancient times. They are creatures of habit who frequent the same feeding grounds, are incredibly sensitive to temperature changes in their environment, and follow the same migratory patterns every year, meaning that they are always among us but are rarely seen as they adhere closely to their predictable routines. Scientists hoped that by tracking and publicizing the movements of the more stereotyped members of the species, they could help to fix the reputation of sharks in the public eye. One shark was Catherine, who was one of the largest great white sharks in the North Atlantic the time she was tagged with the GPS satellite on August 20, 2013. Her whereabouts being constantly broadcast to the public as she cruised the coasts of Florida made her an instant celebrity. At one point, she even had a Twitter account with 61,000 avid followers and fans all along the coast hoping to catch sight of her as she passed. She truly appeared to be the ambassador that researchers had hoped for as the public delighted and followed her livestream tracking updates carefully. However, tragedy struck when on May 12, 2019, Catherine's location was pinged off the South Carolina coast, and then there was satellite silence, leaving her fans to wonder what had become of the massive great white shark. The satellite only pings when the shark's dorsal fin breaks the surface, and great white can go months without ever seeing the light of day. Yet months passed and there was still no sign of beloved Catherine. Until, amazingly, almost a year later at the end of March, a faint ping reached satellites off the coast of Virginia. Believing it to be a ghost ping, researchers disregarded it until April, when 3 pings within quick succession proved without a doubt that Catherine was indeed back and believed to be bigger than ever. Since she was not a full-grown adult at the time of her disappearance, researchers estimate that Catherine will likely put on around 450 kilograms. One thing that is less certain is where exactly Catherine went during her extended hiatus. One theory blames the interruption on biofouling, an accumulation of algae, mussels, and other aquatic detritus that could have blocked the signal on the antennae and only recently worked its way free. However, if this were the case, the battery on her tracker was only supposed to last 5 years, and it is still pinging satellites after 7. So it is somewhat amazing that we were even able to hear from Catherine again. Regardless of how she managed to disappear, researchers are happy to see her again and as great white sharks can live up to 75 years. Hoping we can follow her movements and learn more about the habits of these ocean predators for many years to come. Why has no one seen a whale shark giving birth? The whale shark has a reputation of being the gentle giants of the ocean, and for good reason, dwarfing their infamous great white relatives. They can grow to as large as a school bus, but are peaceful filter feeders with huge flattened heads and a unique spotted pattern on their backs. The giant whale shark holds the record for one of the biggest animals in the sea, but they are also one of the biggest mysteries. As researchers tried to work out how to save this endangered species, they realized that they had no idea about one of the most crucial aspects of this endeavor. How exactly do whale sharks give birth? To be able to help a species survive, scientists need to understand the mating patterns and birthing behavior of that species. However, researchers studying whale sharks have never been able to witness these behaviors in the sharks that they study. Scientists were able to perform ultrasound on several female whale sharks off the coast of the Galapagos Islands who appeared to have distended stomachs. However, although they were able to obtain imaging of unfertilized eggs and ovaries, the females were not pregnant. A second attempt to uncover the mystery involved placing trackers on several female whale sharks, but scientists were yet again left with more unanswered questions as the sharks frequently dove below the 2,000-meter range of the satellites. And nobody knows exactly why, as the plankton that the sharks feed on are not found at such depths. Finding it nearly impossible to form a conservation plan based on such meager knowledge, marine biologists have been forced to watch as the number of whale sharks dwindles each day. They are widely traveled and can be found in a variety of waters across the world, making it nearly impossible to track their movements. One tagged shark named and traveled nearly 13,000 miles over the course of 2 years and even ended up in the Mariana Trench, which is the deepest place on Earth. Fortunately, there have been some lucky breaks to give scientists some clues as to how exactly the whale shark reproduces. 2 individual eyewitness reports of a whale shark mating ritual in the South Atlantic have hinted at the necessary conditions for mating to occur. Turned out to be pregnant with over 300 pups in different stages of development, but all from the same father, indicating that the female sharks likely mate once and stall the sperm for later release. Georgia Aquarium in Atlanta is home to 4 juvenile whale sharks who have yet to reach sexual maturity. But the hope is that scientists will be able to study their behavior in captivity to help understand more of what happens in the wild. What is certain, however, is that researchers are in a vital race against time to try to solve these mysteries and save this majestic species. Although sharks fascinate many people because of their vicious reputations, the truth is that there are many aspects of these majestic creatures that remain a mystery, and they are not as bloodthirsty as many believe them to be. Hopefully, increasing research will help to promote awareness of the true nature of the species so that they can be better protected from extinction as they roam the ocean ecosystems. What do you make of these shark mysteries? The Vatican Secret Archives, renamed the Vatican Apostolic Archives as of October 2019, houses registers, state papers, and documents of the Church, but it's also home to many mysteries, conspiracies, and theories that have developed over the years. The archives, belonging to the Catholic Church, are the property of the Pope, although from 1881 Catholic scholars over the age of 75 may be granted permission to access them. Coupled with the centuries of documents, have perpetuated the speculation and mystery surrounding the Pope, the Catholic Church, and the archives themselves. So today, here at Unexplained Mysteries, we'll be taking a look at some of the theories and secrets of the Vatican Apostolic Archives. The design of a flying machine invented by a Brazilian priest. Bartholomew de Gusmão, a Brazilian priest and inventor, made huge advancements in aviation during the early 18th century. The motivation and inspiration leading to the development of his flying machine was by watching the interaction between a soap bubble and a flame. The rising action paved the way for his flying machine design. This was named Passaroa, derived from the Portuguese passaroa, translating to bird. The Patarola looked essentially like a large inflated bird. The design suggested the use of wind and magnets in order to keep it in flight. He began studying mathematics and physics at university in 1705. It was then in 1708 when the demonstration of a prototype to the Portuguese King John V earned him the right to continue his research until he found success. When he created and trialed a successful design, he was named a professor and became a member of the Royal History Academy. He worked throughout Europe designing and working on further inventions, but upon his return to Portugal, he had been reported to the Inquisition, a group set up within the Catholic Church to punish heresy, known and famous for the severity of their punishments. The Inquisition accused the Brazilian priest of witchcraft and of being in order to avoid such gruesome punishments or possibly loss of life, he burned his manuscripts and fled to Spain, where he passed away shortly afterwards in a hospital. The burning of his work meant his designs were lost, though his brother had records of his early designs, which remain preserved in the Vatican Apostolic Archives. The specific details of the burned manuscripts and his life are unknown, and the information available is relatively vague. But regarding his invention, he can be considered to have had a significant impact upon aeronautics, contributing greatly to the early understanding that we have built upon today. Details of Jesus' Bloodline. Bestseller book and Hollywood hit movie, The Da Vinci Code, written by Dan Brown, sparked controversies and conspiracies surrounding the Vatican. The intense fame of this work focused the attention of theorists towards the Vatican, placing the mysteries of the archives into the public spotlight of pop culture. Despite Brown's insistence that 99% of the contents are factual, the claims are heavily refuted by the Catholic Church and with understandable motivations. Is the Catholic Church hiding the reality? Brown's work claimed that Jesus Christ had married Mary Magdalene and had children with her, creating a traceable bloodline with the potential descendants that were still alive today. The Da Vinci Code isn't the first book of its kind, although it has seen notable fame and success. Since the Da Vinci Code created such claims surrounding Jesus and the Church, conjecture grew and popular conspiracies now suggest that the true bloodline of Jesus Christ is concealed within the Vatican Apostolic Archives. One piece of supposed evidence for the theory that Jesus had a wife and children and subsequent descendants alive today is that there's little known about Christ between his birth and early childhood and the years before his death in his early 30s. The focus of Christ's life within the Bible is largely on his birth and work leading to his crucifixion, hence the Christmas and Easter celebrations. But then, what was Jesus doing with the other 20 years of his life? This is a question many have begun asking. For many, marrying, having children, creating a family is a probable assumption. Certainly the one made by Dan Brown. The Bible states that Mary of Magdala was a follower and traveled with Jesus. However, Brown and other theorists believe their relationship to one another was more intimate, having been married. So what do we believe could be within the Vatican Apostolic Archives? Documentation of Jesus' bloodline potentially being held within the Vatican is a relatively common theory, though the form of this documentation is also in debate. Some people believe that letters and messages sent between St. Paul and Emperor Nero and contain first-person accounts surrounding Jesus' life. This includes a written record of his bloodline. Others believe individuals who had seen Jesus personally had drawn portraits of Jesus, and these are contained within the Vatican Apostolic Archives. The earliest publicly known portraits of Jesus were created approximately 200 years following his death. Why does the Catholic Church need to protect the knowledge surrounding his bloodline, if it is indeed contained within the archives? The answer here is likely rather simple. Evidence of Jesus' bloodline has the potential to contradict the teachings of the Church and therefore undermine Holy Scripture. The implications of Jesus having descendants is a complicated thought. If the relatives of Christ and therefore the relatives of God were alive and accessible, then the role of the Pope would be far less significant. Realistically, after tracing a bloodline for hundreds of generations, the vast majority of people would be related. Tracing a bloodline back only 20 generations could find up to 1 million relatives, and with the ever-increasing population, locating the closest descendant would be an ever-challenging task. If the archives truly do hold documentation of Jesus' bloodline, how updated is it? And with such a vast number of descendants, do you think the bloodline could be traced through to modern society? Do you think revealing this knowledge would conflict with the teachings of the Bible and the Church and Holy Scripture? The Night of Templar Scroll. In 2012, a hugely monumental cultural and media event occurred. Locked in Arcana, overlighted on the mysteries. From March 1st through to September 9th, the Vatican Apostolic Archive shared 100 original historical documents for the public for the first time in history. The priceless documents were displayed in museums in Rome for the summer of 2012. One of these being the trial against the Order of Templars, written upon a scroll 60 meters in length from within the 14th century. The scroll was partially unrolled and displayed beside relevant manuscripts and letters. Templar or Knights Templar were founded in the 12th century. They remained active until the 14th century. These were through the years 1119 and 1312. Initially, their purpose was to protect Christians when on a pilgrimage to the Holy Land. Throughout the 12th century, they took on further military duties. The Templar were a significant and powerful force within the Crusades. This was both physically in the battlefields and economically due to a large control they held over the vast wealth. Whilst they were essentially a military for the Catholic Church, they had strong support with the public prior to their involvement within the Crusades. The continuous growth in social and economic power gained from centuries of being considered an elite army prompted conflict between those who were politically and religiously opposed to the Knights of Templar. King Philip of France accused the Knights of Templar of blasphemy and immorality, and named them heretics. The Knights of the Order were put on trial for sacrilegious crimes such as spitting on crosses and romantic attraction to the same gender, amongst other accusations. The document held within the Vatican Apostolic Archives, as revealed with part of the Lux in Arcana, is a 60-meter-long scroll. It details 231 testimonies of the knights, transcripts and minutes of the trial but lasted for years. Whilst on trial, the Knights of Templar underwent years of maltreatment. Ultimately, they were condemned and burnt at the stake for the crime of heresy. Pope Clement V then disbanded the order, an assumed factor in doing so largely being the pressure from King Philip. An interesting element surrounding the transcripts, however, is the Pope initially intended to pardon the knights, but he appeared to have been convinced and persuaded by King Philip to convict the Templar. Was this the aspect that prompted the secrecy surrounding the trials for so long? The document, whilst protected for 700 years, was only found again in 2001. Having been placed alongside more mundane and less distinctive documents within the Vatican Apostolic Archive. The rediscovering of lost artifacts and revealing them to the public is truly exciting. The Lux in Arcana marks a phenomenal time within human history. The archives hides away years of human history from the judgment of the public, and the archives themselves are developing a history of myths and rumors of their own. Will the secrets and theories continue to circulate, or will the archives give us more glimpses of the world tucked away within them? We've seen only 100 of several million items. If these are the documents that have been revealed, who knows what it is the Catholic Church is unwilling to share? The potential for truly dark secrets lies within the archives, a library for the elite, and while the outlandish conspiracies continue to thrive, we're left to wonder, could it really be true? So what do you make of these secrets being held within the Vatican Apostolic Archives? Photographs can't always express the meaning behind themselves. Sometimes a story needs to be told with a photograph. The interactive and enlightening engagement which can come from a photograph is awe-inspiring. So today, here at Unexplained Mysteries, we'll be taking a look at 3 interesting photographs which illustrate a bigger story. Cher ami is a French word which means dear friend. It was also the name given to a homing pigeon donated by the pigeon fanciers of Britain to be used by the United States Army Signal Corps during the First World War. Cher ami was not able to have delivered a message from a distressed battalion after several other pigeons failed and was shot dead by German armies. The encircled battalion was also known as the Lost Battalion. They were the 9 companies of the 77th Division, which had roughly 554 men. It was led by Major Charles W. Whittlesey. The battalion during the war unknowingly found themselves in German forces after the other units that were meant to support the lost battalion had been stalled. The lost battalion began to run out of food and ammunition alongside different attacks from the German forces. This left only 194 of them alive, uncaptured and unwounded. Major Charles W. Whittlesey, after most of his dispatch riders were captured and killed. They then began to send messages through pigeons. 2 pigeons before the Cher Amos were equally shot dead by the German forces. They had different notes respectively which read, "Many wounded, we cannot evacuate," and "Men are suffering, can support be sent?" The artillery batteries which were to support and protect the lost battalion, out of the which led to the dispatch of the 3rd pigeon, Cher Ami. She held a note which read, "We're along the road parallel. Our own artillery is dropping a barrage directly on us." Upon seeing the pigeon flying out, the Germans as usual opened fire and shot her down with the bullet blinding her eye. It also caused her great injury to the leg, which barely left her leg hanging. In that same devastating state, only a matter of seconds later, the pigeon was back in the air, reaching her destination in just 25 minutes and dispatching her message. This eventually saved the lives of the remaining 194 survivors. However, it lost her leg. It did give her a wooden leg carefully carved out, as well as a medal for her heroic deeds. The haunted SS Watertown. The story of the haunted SS Watertown has scared some who believe it and have rebutted others who have debated its credibility. They claim the era the event took place was one where people maliciously cooked up supernatural and paranormal stories to score cheap public recognition and attention. The haunted SS town revolves around 2 men. These are James Courtney and Michael Meehan. They were both crewmen on the SS Watertown. But unfortunately for the duo, they lost their lives while performing their duty. As tradition demanded, they were buried at sea, and the whole crew managed to move on with their lives. Rumors even have it that James Courtney and Michael Meehan were not so loved by the other crew members. This would mean that the news of their death wasn't as painful to them as it should have been. The 2 crewmen who died were said to have not been on good terms with the other crew members. When they died, none of the other crew members made a speech, nor gave a sound as their final words. James Courtney and Michael Meehan died in December 1924 while cleaning an empty cargo. It's near certain they would have shown displeasure about the job due to how unpleasant it was. Unfortunately for the pair, they lost their lives in the discharge of their official duties. They were overcome and overshadowed by fumes, and before any help, they were taken to hospital. Be rendered to them, the fumes would emerge from an empty cargo tank and claim their lives. It's been affirmed that Michael Meehan was the one that died first from the fumes of the empty cargo tank. This is because his body was found wrapped in that of James Courtney. The scenario suggests that probably after Meehan died, James Courtney tried saving his life by dragging him to safety before Courtney himself died. As much as the deceased weren't so loved by their colleagues, the opposite seems to be the case for Meehan and Courtney to their colleagues. The crew members began to report seeing the faces of their dead colleagues in the water and waves of the ship. Their faces would appear at will and stick around for some seconds before disappearing. This made the captain of the ship purchase a camera to get proof. This was so he could validate the claims of the other crew members, as it seemed Meehan and Courtney had refused to appear to the captain himself. Fortunately for him, the camera came in handy and served the purpose it was intended for. The next time the faces appeared in the water again, the captain of the ship took 6 photographs of them and immediately sealed and locked the camera away so the photographs would be fully processed. Upon processing the photographs at the next port, it was only the 6th picture that was able to capture and show the faces. The others only captured the sight of the waters. Despite close examination and inspection revealing the pictures were genuine and not tampered with, some are still double-minded as regards to its credibility. Whichever the case, the fact remains we have the faces of 2 dead men captured on camera. The real war horses. In 1918, Sir Alfred Munnings, considered to be one of England's most notable painters, made a remarkable painting of General Steele and Warrior. The painting, however, denotes deeper meanings than just the mere sight of a soldier on a horse. The painting depicts a very great friend of Winston Churchill, General Jack Steele, saddled on a horse, Warrior, battling on the Western Front. While Warrior eventually came back from the war unhurt, several other animals that also played one role or another didn't make it back alive. Warrior's courage in battle, even when the soldiers were falling, earned it the nickname the horse the Germans couldn't kill. Warrior eventually died in 1918 at the age of 33 after the war. Warrior died living on the south coast of England with the Seeley family. The real war horses center majorly around millions of British horses who served, and horses were in great use and in more demand by soldiers. As many of foot soldiers played a significant role in the war, horses too were not left out, and their input eventually led to the victory of the Allied forces. The National Army Museum reports that horses were a major backbone of the Allied forces in winning the war. It also notes that more than 1 million horses and mules were used in total. At the beginning of the war, the British Army only had 25,000 horses. But it was only a matter of days that number began to grow to over 100,000. And eventually skyrocketed into 1 million. The British purchased horses from Canada, the US, Uruguay, Tennessee, and several other parts to participate in the war. One of the widely believed notions for the use of horses was horses were believed to be fierce and strong, and would go about its work or any use it's intended for, even in the face of bullets and bombings. The horses served for major functions, namely 1. The supply horse was used to transport ammunition, food and medical supplies, and injured soldiers to be quickly attended to. 2. The battle horses, which were ridden by soldiers in the battlefield. 3. The gun horses, which pulled different ammunition and artillery pieces. 4. The cavalry horse was also used in battle. It was also reckoned that being on a horse was inspirational and boosted the morale of soldiers. As such, the British invested a lot of money and other resources in purchasing them to win the war. The battlefields were mostly covered in thick muds, and vehicles were therefore of no use. It was then left for the horses to transport the men, medical and food supplies, as well as ammunition. The importance of the role horses played is captured and summed up totally in the words of a New Zealand gunner. But strokes. To lose a horse was worse than losing a man, because at this stage men were completely replaceable and a horse was not. So what do you make of these interesting stories and hidden meaning behind them? Over the course of centuries, there have been countless supposed sightings of beasts, phenomena, and new undiscovered species. They have made their way into science fiction, cultural folklore, and even campfire horror stories. Whether you consider these sightings false or wholeheartedly believe these bizarre anecdotes, we cannot be certain what these beings truly are. Cryptids have been known to hide in our seas, our mountains, or anywhere in between. So today, here at Unexplained Mysteries, we'll be taking a look at animals we think may be lurking within our jungles. Dingonek. Throughout the late 19th and early 20th centuries, tales emerged of the dingonek, a strange creature mostly seen within the African Congolese jungles found in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Investigating these jungles has led us to the discoveries of new species, such as the okapi, a distant relative to the giraffe, or the bongo, an African forest antelope. But could there also be some more unusual, less easily explained animals hiding amongst the trees? The dingonek, often referred to as a jungle walrus, has had very mixed descriptions of its physical appearance throughout years, after revealing itself for only a few minor glimpses. From first-hand accounts to people's personal opinion based upon drawings, this strange creature has been reported as being a peculiar mix of many animals: a jungle walrus, a scorpion mixed with a big cat, a pangolin combined with a saber-toothed tiger, a beast fish. The first report of the dingonek occurred in 1907, spotted near Lake Victoria by big game hunter Alfred Jordan, alongside his accompanying hunting party. Perhaps our most detailed account of the dingonek, however, has come from another big game hunter, Edgar Beecher Bronson, who has recounted in Closed Territory. Bronson described this cryptid as reaching 14 or 15 feet in length, having a head with markings resembling that of a leopard but the size of a lioness, having 2 white fangs, scales similar to an armadillo, a fin as a tail, and the width of a hippopotamus. This peculiar description of such a physically repellent creature is confusing to say the least. In 1913, an article was published in the East Africa Natural History Society written by Charles William Hobley, which added similar descriptions to Bronson's. In 1918, an article published in a magazine confirmed the beast as being a recent discovery of a new species. According to sightings and legends, the dingonek is a carnivore and shows no mercy to any animals it may come across. The meter-long tusks allow for almost any animal to become an easy victim to the only elephants appear to be exempt, presumably due to their great size and strength. Equipped with its strange mixture of animal features, the dingonek is reportedly incredibly territorial, meaning a passerby can easily fall prey to the beast fish. This unusual creature is inarguably elusive, though with such mixed accounts and interpretations surrounding the physical aspects of this animal, how can we be sure we will ever find it? The search continues to determine the true nature of this supposedly hideous beast. Solomon Islands dragon snake. The Solomon Islands are rumored to be home to the dragon snake, a flying creature similar to a dragon that allegedly spits fire. The dragon snake is thought to be found largely in coastal or mountainous areas of the Solomon Islands, as this is where the majority of sightings have occurred. This nocturnal creature has a rather poor reputation amongst us humans, as it is known of any missing person cases and even some loss of life. It is a common idea that pterosaur cryptids are less than pleasant towards humans, a trend the dragon snake seemingly intends to keep. Often seen as a light source or a silhouette, the dragon snake is said to be bioluminescent, much like a jellyfish, in order to attract prey such as fish and other sea creatures. The other physical attributes of the dragon snake include a human-like body, but with a generic shape that mimics that of a stingray, reaching 60 feet in diameter. A long tail is often shown to have a shape at the end, usually alternating between a triangular or diamond shape. With piercing red eyes and a green and brown scaly skin, the dragon snake certainly does not appear to resemble any life we can currently confirm exists. The most distinctive feature, and perhaps the most terrifying, however, is the dragon snake's ability to breathe fire. Accounts describe a fireball being shot, burning items upon impact. Accompanied by the silent nature of the beast, it certainly sounds difficult to escape this creature. The initial sighting of the dragon snake has been recounted in Gerard de Jode's 1593 atlas entitled Speculum Orbis Terrae, meaning Mirror of the World. More recent sightings have been reported by Western travelers too. One fisherman allegedly saw the dragon snake flying overhead and made the ill-advised choice to point a torch at it, eliciting an angry response from the strange beast. The odd creature followed the fishermen to shore and supposedly aimed their fiery weapons towards the poor man. It has been claimed that the scorched and damaged paint seen on the interior of the boat is evidence of this chase, whilst the man hid before eventually leaving. Another encounter of the dragon snake has been reported by Marius Boravon, a former RAF engineer. When Boravon and his friends were fishing, they saw a bright light which they likened to a star. This light allegedly went underwater and emerged stronger, continuing to move over the sky until it was no longer visible over the trees. Within the span of 7 months, Boravon's group of adventurers saw the dragon snake 60 times. Boravon described the beast as a Star Trek warrior-type reptilian half-human man. Throughout the centuries, many people have proposed alternative explanations to explain this unusual creature. Some believe alien activity is the true cause of the lights frequently visible from the island. Intermittent lights could show possible alien bases on Earth. Marius Boravon himself suggested that his group saw an alien UFO, though information was scarcely available online surrounding cryptids in 2003 when Boravon created his website, which may have influenced his conclusions. Others believe this creature was created due to the high levels of seismic activity on the Solomon Islands, and others refute this, claiming that a monster created by a geological feature would appear on the ground, not in the sky. Those less inclined to believe the supernatural argue that possible hidden military action or other human activity is the root of this wonder, while skeptics claim this is a hoax or hallucination. So it appears the mystery beast may not be so easily explained after all. From the theories of possible other causes to the abductions it should be responsible for, the dragon snake could continue to hide in the jungle forever. Siwil, possible uncontacted tribe Siwil are considered to be a race of wild humanoids, a species that closely resembles humankind but with notable significant differences. Thought to be similar to known humanoid species in Indonesia, Siwil lives in the jungles of Java, also in Indonesia, mostly surrounding Meru Batiri National Park. Siwil is derived from the Japanese word meaning little, so it should come as no surprise that the distinctive differences between the human race and Sibyl tribe is size. A physical account of the Sibyl tribe describes them as reaching less than a meter in height, traveling unclothed and in groups with a fair amount of body hair and hair that reaches to their shoulders. These humanoids often frequent areas surrounding water in order to access seafood such as fish, crab, and shrimp, which we believe composes the main basis of their diet. Fishing often takes place using handcrafted tools such as spears, as well as small bags in order to carry their food and supplies. While us humans appear keen to interact and increase our sightings, the Sibyl tribe have been known so far to run from humans or jump in order to flee from us. These humanoids have a reputation for their agility, being able to jump to both impressive heights and lengths when you consider their relative height. What makes these humanoids unique is how advanced they appear to be. The tribe seems to be remarkably close to human life like ourselves. Sibyl live and function as part of a community, and their relatively advanced tools indicate a higher intelligence than other known humanoid tribes. For example, the Orang Pendek tribe is referred to as being similar to small gorillas, and the Ibagogo having a close resemblance to orangutans. Harry Budi Ermawan, a municipal council member, explored the jungles of Java to aim to find the Sibyl. He saw them, but, in keeping with expectations, the men ran. Strangely, when Ermawan took some covert photos from a distance, the photos were developed to reveal only background, with the Sibyl tribe members being absent from the frame. Anang Retano ventured with the Mysterious Tracks team in order to find the Sibyl people in 2011, and they saw tracks they had left. Retano discovered some tracks along the estuary of the Nangalang River with the length from toe to ankle reaching just 9.2 centimeters and only 2 centimeters in width. Video footage was retrieved in which 3 men can be seen to run into the jungle. The video suggested the Sibyl tribe make a phonetic sound likened to a monkey. For now, we remain unable to contact this tribe, though hopefully this can change their future. Plenty of animals, humanoids, and monsters live on the brink of discovery, and while for now we watch from a distance, reporting encounters and taking photos, perhaps one day we can truly understand the other life that lives amongst us on Earth. What do you make of these mysterious cryptids that live in the jungle? The vast, seemingly emptiness of space has been a topic of study for centuries, from sailors navigating their locations using the stars to the most modern techniques and satellites we use to explore further into space. The research we undertake constantly gives us new insights, and sometimes as the public we don't quite grasp the sheer significance of these results. So today, here at Unexplained Mysteries, we'll be taking a look at 3 exciting space discoveries made so far. Within 2020, meteors that brushed Earth's atmosphere may have brought life to Venus. The focus of our research into space now seems to be heavily focused on discovering life. Aliens have frequented the plots of our science fiction for decades, but what scientists are looking for to confirm life is a little different from a green-looking alien. Scientists believe that the meteors that have brushed up against the atmosphere of Earth may have transferred life to Venus. Traces of phosphine have been detected within a cloud of Venus. This is an extremely significant discovery. On Earth, phosphine is a byproduct of life. Of course, the most exciting conclusion to draw would be that there's existing life on Venus, though this isn't particularly plausible. The suggestion instead, however, is that the phosphine has been transferred from Earth to Venus. The Department of Astronomy at Harvard hypothesized that the asteroids might have brushed by Earth's atmosphere, moving some microbes along with it. This would therefore explain their presence on the neighboring planets within our solar system. Currently, it's estimated that a minimum of 600,000 asteroids have been brushed by our Earth's atmosphere. Scientists have rightly pointed out that before we can attempt to explain what extraterrestrial life forms this may have resulted in, we must first figure out what's within the upper atmosphere of Earth. We know very little about this terrestrial life, but these microbes are being transferred around our solar system, such as within Venus's atmosphere, thanks to the asteroids grazing our planet's atmosphere. Researchers Amir Siraj and Abraham Loeb were the first to discover an asteroid that originated from outside our solar system in 2019. They suggested that due to the transferring of life between planets, the life on Venus and Earth may be similar or inherently indistinguishable. This idea, presumed by Siraj and Loeb that life on planet developed from life on another, is referred to as panspermia. Some even believe this may be how life on Earth began, and this phenomenon is happening continuously all throughout the universe. Panspermia suggests that this microbial life is the essential element in supporting and creating life. In 2019, NASA found some sugar molecules on 2 different meteorites. This provided further evidence for the idea that asteroids support celestial life. If we aim to continue this research, the exploration may have to start a little closer to home, investigating the microbial life within the Earth's upper atmosphere at a staggering altitude of an estimated 85 kilometers. Perhaps the most puzzling aspect of this potential discovery is the climate of Venus. This is due to its extreme climate that it has within its atmosphere. Venus has a surface temperature of an overwhelming 864 degrees Fahrenheit. This is approximately 462 degrees Celsius. How could life function there? Venus sports the nickname of Earth's evil twin, with 40 active volcanoes on the surface, higher than any other celestial body within our solar system. In late 2019, NASA set out to explore Venus, working on a spacecraft to do so. If the probe discovers microbial life, the next series of actions will be to look at the relationship between that life and the altitude and climate of this bizarre planet. Some believe advancements in understanding Venus may aid in a manned mission to Mars. This truly is a revolutionary discovery that will undoubtedly shape the research and design of future space exploration. China's Chang'e 4 detects hazardous radiation levels on the Moon. The Chinese moon probe Chang'e 4, named after the Chinese moon goddess, has reported shocking news. The levels of space radiation on the Moon appear to be 2 to 3 times higher than those experienced on the International Space Station. This presents unprecedented danger for astronauts exploring the Moon in the future. In January of 2019, Chang'e 4 made scientific history. As the first soft landing on the far side of the Moon, the Moon probe provided radiation levels to the Chinese-German team for the full radiation exposure from the lunar surface. It was significantly higher than anticipated. Despite the height of the radiation levels, it's a huge achievement, and it advances our knowledge by exponential amounts. It can serve as a benchmark for radiation levels we measure elsewhere. A physicist with the German Space Agency Medicine Institute says, "We now have a better understanding of the risk of radiation to those on the Moon. The 1960s and 97's Apollo mission, most notably Apollo 11, proved it safe for humans to spend a short number of days on the Moon. However, NASA didn't record the daily radiation measurements. This means we couldn't determine the duration it would be safe for crews to stay. This new data, however, provided by Chang'e 4 changes that. We now know the radiation levels on our Moon are 200 times higher than those on Earth. The explanation of such a high difference between the levels of radiation on the Moon and the Earth is effectively due to the Earth's magnetosphere. The Earth is entirely within, the International Space Station is half submerged, and the Moon is not within the magnetosphere. The magnetosphere deflects a large proportion of the radiation from space. This consequently lessens the radiation we experience on Earth. The radiation is produced from a variety of sources, some including the galactic cosmic rays, sporadic solar particle events, for example solar flared, as well as neutron and gamma rays. Radiation is measured in sieverts, which calculates the amount of radiation absorbed by our tissue. The Moon appears to emit 1,369 microsieverts daily, 2.6 more than what the International Space Station crew experienced on a day, and 5 to 10 times higher than a flight from New York, USA to Frankfurt, Germany. NASA's Artemis missions claims to have individuals on the Moon for a long-term period of time. This would be both living and working on the Moon's surface by 2024. It's estimated that without additional measures in place, a human could only stay on the Moon for 2 months, though an extended period would require protective measures to be implemented. An example of this measure could be an 80 centimeters wall of lunar soil built around habitats in order to shield humans from radiation. The further knowledge we have about radiation on the Moon is revolutionary. We can ensure safer space travel and exploration, and find out more about the universe than ever before. The 2020 Q6 asteroid. Amateur astronomer Leonardo Amorel spotted the 2020 Q6 asteroid on August 27, 2020. This was from an observatory in Brazil. The asteroid was incredibly large at 3,280 feet wide. It was considered to be a potential hazard, able to cause a global catastrophe had it hit Earth. Fortunately, it passed by Earth safely on Tuesday, September 10, 2020. The discovery of this near-Earth object was facilitated by an $8,500 grant. This was received from the Planetary Society in 2019 to fund better telescope equipment to allow for more accurate locating and tracking of near-Earth objects. Furthermore, the geographic situation was an advantage. This was due to the Southern Hemisphere offering a more unique and less often perceived vantage point. A significant amount of the sky surveys and equipment to pinpoint the location of asteroids can be found within the Northern Hemisphere, so this discovery highlights the importance of varied funding. Despite the sheer size and seemingly close proximity to the asteroid, it didn't truly pose a significant threat to Earth. The asteroid was close enough to cause excitement when one considers the sheer size of space was still more than 20 million miles away, 100 times the distance between Earth and the Moon. The Planetary Society has commented on the increased number of asteroids that have been reported in the media. They reassure people that we have simply developed the technology to see and discover asteroids, but there's not an overwhelmingly increased amount. A chief scientist at the Planetary Society stated, "There aren't suddenly more asteroids, we're just getting better at seeing them due to better technology." NASA and other space agencies continue to search for near-Earth objects. They even went as far as designing telescope equipment to specifically focus on this. The discovery of the 2020 Q6 being so close to Earth serves as a reminder as the significance of ground-based astronomers, as well as the valuable research, data, and intel we were able to retrieve without heading into space. The discovery of asteroids and near-Earth objects can seem frightening. After all, we all know what happened to the dinosaurs. But ultimately, finding any new scientific information is a huge step forward, especially when it's so close to home. From the potential discovery of new life to locating asteroids that pass by us, 2020 has been a substantial year for astronomers. With advancing technology and more findings being added to existing data, we continue to make new discoveries as well as conduct more exciting research. Will we find more evidence of microbial life? Will we find a way to stay on the Moon long term? Space discoveries and explorations are never ending, and with new questions being posed over time, research keeps evolving. What will we discover next? So what do you make of these recent space discoveries? Every year, many people witness unidentified flying objects in the sky. The majority of these eventually get explained, but there are some that remain a mystery and get labeled by UFO researchers as the real deal. What's interesting, though, is when professionals like airline pilots, astronauts, and even the police detail their encounters. People give these types of sightings more credibility, as these people, for the most part, are said to be level-headed. However, one Marshall County sheriff was left confused after he encountered some mysterious lights in the sky. The story begins in 1979, when a county sheriff was on patrol at 1:40 a.m. As he was driving down Highway 220, he claims that he drove into a ball of white light. He claimed the object was very bright, measuring in at 8 to 12 inches in diameter and hovering roughly 3 to 4 feet off the ground. Johnson said this in a police interview, going on to say that the objects had edges that were very defined. As the sheriff drove towards the light, something happened, as the next thing he remembers is waking up in a nearby ditch. When he made it back to his car, though, it was obvious that something had happened, as the windshield and one of the lights were smashed, along with the radio antenna being bent back. Interestingly, the watch on his wrist and also the clock on his car were 14 minutes behind. The news soon reached the media, where various articles were put out about the event, even calling the sheriff's car the UFO car. The sheriff's car can be seen at the Marshall County Museum. It often gets displayed around the country, with the story being retold. So what actually happened? UFO researchers have labeled the incident as one of the most important UFO cases. And this is because it's not just a story. There's actual physical evidence to back up the claims. Something that doesn't happen very often in the world of ufology. The story goes that after the encounter, Sheriff Johnson didn't want to be contacted, and even went on to distance himself from his friends and family, living a quiet life and not wanting to talk about the events that unfolded that night. As it turns out, though, this isn't the case, and various people have managed to get hold of him in recent years. When asked about what happened that night and whether it was a UFO, the sheriff said the following: "People don't really ask me about that anymore. I remember looking up at the sky and thinking what happened. After that, I pretty much got on with my life." Although he noted that at the time it was a very big deal, and many people wanted to hear his story, from news stations to national papers, at the time everyone was interested in what he made contact with that night. Perhaps, though, one of the strangest things about this case is how he just doesn't seem to care. Although the experience had changed his life because people would constantly ask him what happened, it was as if he didn't even care. Some UFO researchers have said it's strange how something so mysterious can happen to someone, yet they don't really seem to care. After all, if this happened to most people, they'd want answers for what they made contact with. He's even said himself that he lost time after hitting the light. He said that he's had people turn up at his house and speculate about what it was, going on to say that he usually just sips a drink and waits until they go away. He's not against the idea of it being an unidentified flying object, or even linked to extraterrestrials, but said that he wouldn't speculate about what happened that day. He said the following: "I saw a ball of light. I drove towards it and suddenly it was in the car with me. It's unexplainable and will remain so. I'm happy with my mental stability." Interestingly, though, other UFO researchers defended his outlook and said that many people who encounter things like UFOs have this outlook, saying that in a way it's a coping mechanism. Those who encounter UFOs behave differently. Some become obsessed with what happened and want answers for what they saw, while others question if what they saw was even there in the first place, while some just brush it aside and move on with their life, knowing that there's a high possibility that they'll never truly know what they encountered. The sheriff did say that at most it's just an interesting story to tell at the bar. His account, though, does seem to stand out, with researchers saying they don't think there's ever been someone who's had such a close encounter and doesn't seem to care about what it was. After all, driving into a bright light, being knocked out for several minutes, and waking up outside of your car with your watch not working is the stuff of fiction. Yet this individual had proof this happened. Skeptics, though, have said they have another idea, and instead he may have accidentally crashed the car, and as a way of covering for himself made up the story of the UFO. In a way, this makes much more sense. And some have said it's caused them to say this because of his outlook, saying that if this happened to anyone else, there would be a part of them that would want answers. However, others came to his defense and said that we all handle these types of things different, saying that he might just be in denial. Close encounters are perhaps one of the most interesting topics when talking about UFOs. It seems so out there, yet so many have detailed similar encounters. The question is, if they were lying, why would people go through the trouble of coming forward with their story, knowing that they'll be judged? It's an interesting topic that many still don't understand. At this moment in time, we can only speculate. UFO researchers have said, though, it's one of the best close encounter experiences, and that it's likely that we'll never truly understand what happened that night. So what do you guys make of this interesting UFO case? Do you think the sheriff did drive into a bright light and lose time? Perhaps this was a type of abduction encounter, and the bright light caused him to lose time? Also, how would you react if this happened to you? Would you be as relaxed as a sheriff? NASA has announced that a strange asteroid is making its way towards our planet. As stated on NASA's website, asteroids, sometimes called minor planets, are rocky, airless remnants left over from the early formation of our solar system around 4.6 billion years ago. The current known asteroid count is 995,729. Most of this ancient space rubble can be found orbiting the Sun between Mars and Jupiter within the main asteroid belt. Asteroids range in size, from Vesta, the largest, at around 329 miles or 530 kilometers in diameter, to bodies that are less than 33 feet or 10 meters across. The total mass of all the asteroids combined is less than that of Earth's moon. However, this new discovery is a little different. As scientists have said, it wasn't created billions of years ago, but rather less than 80 years ago. They suggested that this celestial body may actually be a piece of rocket that was sent to the moon back in 1966. This was part of the Atlas Centaur 7 rockets from 1966, a program that was known to be riddled with failures. The discovery has now been called Asteroid 2020, and scientists have said they've been tracking it for around a month now. The team have said this man-made object is currently traveling at 1,500 miles per hour and is estimated to be around 26 feet in length. It was originally thought to be an asteroid because of its size, as many other asteroids found in our solar system are around the same size, but it's now thought to be a man-made rocket. Regardless, it's keeping the name of Asteroid 2020, with scientists excited about this discovery. Paul Chodos, who's a NASA asteroid expert, said the following about the discovery. "I'm pretty jazzed about this. It's been a hobby of mine to find one of these and draw such a link, and I've been doing it for decades now. I could be wrong on this. I don't want to appear overly confident, but it's the first time in my view that all the pieces fit together with an actual known launch." He went on to say that the object will likely spend around 4 months circling our planet, after which it will then shoot away towards the Sun. He also said he doesn't think this object will slam into Earth, saying that it will go out past Earth onto its own orbit. It's interesting when these types of discoveries are made, as it just shows us how much humans have impacted not only planet Earth, but also the space above it. When we think of space, we usually think of a massive open area with planets, asteroids, and galaxies. However, when venturing to the edges of our planet, astronomers and researchers have said it's littered with man-made objects, many of which have been placed here in the last 50 years. Some have also expressed some concern about this, and how much space junk we should be sending up in the future. Going back a few months ago, many people across the world started to report mysterious lights in the sky. Most of these appeared in a line and consisted of over 10 glowing objects. At first, several photographs made their way online, with people confused about what they'd captured on camera. One of the first things people went to was these being unidentified flying objects, or could have been linked to the military. The answer for what these objects were, though, was announced shortly after these images made their way online. Turns out that SpaceX launched their Starlink mission. SpaceX said the following on their website. Going back on the 18th of March at 8:16 a.m., they launched their 6th launch of Starlink satellites. The Starlink satellites will deploy approximately 15 minutes after liftoff. SpaceX engineers will conduct data reviews to ensure all Starlink satellites are operating as intended. Once the checkouts are complete, the satellites will then use their onboard iron thrusters to move into their intended orbits and operational altitude of 550 kilometers. SpaceX is leveraging its experience in building rockets and spacecrafts to deploy the world's most advanced broadband internet system, with performance that far surpasses that of traditional satellite internet. and a global network unbounded by ground infrastructure limitations, Starlink will deliver high-speed broadband internet to locations where access has been unreliable, expensive, or completely unavailable. Each Starlink satellite weighs approximately 260 kilograms and features a compact flat panel design that minimizes volume, allowing for a dense launch stack to take full advantage of Falcon 9's launch capabilities. With 4 powerful phased array and 2 parabolic antennas on each satellite, an enormous amount of throughput can be placed and redirected in a short time, for an order of magnitude lower than traditional satellite-based internet. This news comes shortly after the Federal Communications Commission granted SpaceX a license for a global broadband internet service. Elon Musk described the objects as looking like flat UFOs. SpaceX have reported that around 360 satellites have been sent into low EV orbit, but that they still want to send thousands more into space. There's been some controversy about this mission, with some saying they're taking up the night sky and ruining the views. As of right now, SpaceX has said they want there to be over 42,000 of these satellites above our planet, so you can see why people are concerned about them taking up the night sky. Another thing people have said is that it only makes astronomers work harder when trying to find things like asteroids. NASA said the following in a statement: near-Earth objects are comets and asteroids that have been nudged by the gravitational attraction of nearby planets, and this allows them to enter the Earth's neighborhood. Composed mostly of water ice with embedded dust particles, comets originally formed in the cold outer planetary system, while most of the rocky asteroids formed in the warmer inner solar system, between the orbits of Mars and Jupiter. The scientific interest in comets and asteroids is due largely to their status. The giant outer planets Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune formed from an agglomeration of billions of comets, and the leftover bits and pieces from this formation process are the comets we see today. Likewise, today's asteroids are the bits and pieces left over from the initial agglomeration of the inner planets that include Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars. As the primitive leftover building blocks of the solar system formation process, comets and asteroids offer clues to the chemical mixture from which the planets formed some 4.6 billion years ago. End quotes. So what do you guys make of these discoveries? And what's your thoughts on the Starlink satellites? Have you ever wanted to visit a creepy island? The lure of the mystery and the scent of tragedy can be an incredible buzz for some, and if you've ever been a fan of horror, then the macabre is often far more appealing than the traditional. However, the question of spirits, evil ghouls, and loss of life roaming the islands isn't one for the faint-hearted. So today, here at Unexplained Mysteries, we'll be taking a look at 3 creepy islands. Dead Man's Island. Located near the Isle of Sheppey in Kent, England, lies an inconspicuous stretch of muddy swampland known to locals and journalists alike as Dead Man's Island. You cannot visit without authorized permission, and the island has been closed to the public uninhabited for over 150 years. When you are given permission to visit the island, you are immediately greeted by a sight picked straight out of a horror movie. Nicknamed hundreds of open coffins covered with scattered remains welcome you with a macabre boldness hitherto unseen. Over countless decades and generations that have sprung forth since, the barren mud bank has, with its moss-covered rocks and hidden cracks and caves perfect for hiding in, inspired endless tales of ghoulish spirits and rabid dogs roaming the island looking to ward off potential invaders. Some have claimed that the island is solely occupied by the deceased, which isn't surprising. It's fair to say that no one has ventured anywhere near the island since, with journalists only recently making the trip over not out of choice, but out of necessity. The world needs to know about the tragic events that happened there. In fact, the terrible truth behind the island stems back to the conclusion of the Napoleonic Wars in 1814. Several naval ships, including the HMS Ganymede, were commandeered and converted into a floating prison with steel bars, cells to hold hundreds of convicts, and squalid conditions. Conditions so bad that they became a filthy breeding ground for fatal diseases, with outbreaks of cholera widespread and uncontrollable. Alongside multiple diseases to deal with, the inmates were also subjected to poor food and drink rations, leaving 1 in 4 people to pass away out of 400. Because the passengers were and therefore seen as subhuman by the guards, they were denied a formal burial. To prevent the cholera outbreaks from getting out of hand even more, the authorities had no choice but to dispose of the bodies of those contaminated on the closest bit of land they could find. This ad hoc disposal site just so happened to be the Medway mudflats, which would, as a result, later become known as Dead Man's Island. It is believed by many researchers, scholars, and journalists that the burials took place throughout the 1800s. Daphne Charman, a historian and researcher who studied the island and wrote a book on it, claims burials were still happening there in 1845, with bodies originally buried in wooden coffins placed in unmarked graves under 6 foot of mud in isolated locations across the Medway. In 2016, the remains of over 200 of the inmates' bodies were found. Scholars believe that they were only discovered because of the tides of the Medway rising, washing the remains out to sea and redepositing body parts along the bay of the island. Though some argue that the bodies should be reburied in proper burial sites, the sea is unrelenting and it's doubtful this will happen. Most of the lost souls abandoned there, along with Dead Man's Island itself, will all succumb to the overwhelming ocean eventually. San Savolo. Just 10 minutes from Venice lies an island with a dark and troubling history, San Savolo Island. While Italy is typically known for its decadent dishes and stunning Mediterranean landscapes, one would not travel to San Savolo to take in the view. It is, however, perfect if you are a history fanatic with a liking for the macabre. The history of the island is intricately linked to the monasteries and hospitals that were built there. The first being the church dedicated to San Savolo, a martyr from Trieste. Between the 9th and 13th century, the island served as home to the Benedictine monks, joined later by a gaggle of nuns that had escaped the convent of St. Leon and Basso that had been utterly destroyed by a raging seaquake. However, by the 18th century, only a few nuns were left. As a result, during the war against Turkey in 1716, the monastery was shut down and transformed into a military hospital. From 1725, the Senate of the Republic of Venice made an executive decision. The hospital and the island itself were both used as a makeshift insane asylum after mental illness was first recognized as a disease that could be cured. To begin with, the asylum was only used for rich patients that could afford their own treatment. Unfortunately, because of their class and resulting poor diet of polenta, many of these patients succumbed to pellagra, a condition characterized by mental confusion and bewilderment. Completely exclusive and entirely in keeping with the times, San Savolo only allowed male patients to attend the asylum. There were just 5 doctors in total, directly in charge of taking care of over 700 patients, each with a range of mental illnesses still being researched. For over 250 years, the island was used as a dumping ground for all of Italy's mental health patients. That is until the main hospital was shut down for the final time in 1978, due to a reform of the Italian legislation on psychiatric hospitals. Somewhat unsurprisingly, the metropolitan city of Venice, the closest city, now owns the island, including all estates and cultural assets associated with the asylum. In the 1980s, the Manichaean government established the Institute for the Study of Social and Cultural Marginalization, a foundation set up to preserve the asylum's history, maintain important records, and restore the island to its previous grandeur and extravagance. Since 1995, the island has also been home to Venice International University, a center for research and education formed to bring the island's economy back up and provide a tourist attraction. Even more recently, the Venetian government began hosting an international artists' residency out of the museum, which has since become a site for countless stunning exhibitions, vibrant festivals, and mind-blowing performances. Nazino Island, Tomsk, Russia, home to a yearly pilgrimage made by locals between the city and Nazinsky Island as a heartfelt gesture of remembrance and sorrow for the victims of the horrific inhumane events that occurred there during the summer of 1933. A social experiment created by Joseph Stalin and the local Soviet authorities that worked under him. Almost 90 years ago, a small group of barges that were intended to be used to transport were filled with thousands of Urbanda-class prisoners, approximately 6,000 in total, and taken to Nazinsky Island. It's widely understood that these men and women were brought there to be used as settlers, with orders to construct a special settlement to add to Stalin's Gulag. The network of labor camps spread across the Soviet Union. This plan was part of a much larger plan to resettle at least 2 million people to Siberia and Kazakhstan by Genrik Yagoda, the head of the OGPU secret police, and Matvey Berman, head of the Gulag system at the time. The plan was to bring 1 million hectares of virgin land into production and to become a self-sufficient society within just 2 years. Nonetheless, resources were severely limited by the ongoing famine occurring in the Soviet Union. The authorities in Tomsk were unfamiliar with the urban deportee prisoners and expected a great deal from them. As a result, the deportees were sent to the most isolated work sites in a bid to keep them far away. By the time that they arrived on the island on May 18, 1933, many had already died, having quickly fallen victim to starvation, disease, and the brutal elements. This is due to the lack of tools, shelter, and food provided to them by the prisoners' armed guards, who took it upon themselves to only give them a ration of 300 grams of to mix with water and make a paste. The prisoners were disembarked in such a disorganized and hapless manner that upon arrival only 322 women and 4,556 men were counted. The bodies of 27 people were found, thought to have died during the trip, and over a third of the remaining settlers were far too weak to even stand. Not content with the disparity in rations and the overwhelming brutality between the settlers, an additional 1,200 deportees were sent to the island on May 27, 1933. What little order there was on the island soon began to break down and evolve into chaos. A mass of fights broke out and many deportees were hunted by the guards, which ended up in them losing their lives. None of the deportees knew much about agriculture, which made it impossible to make the island properly habitable. With only flour provided, the remaining deportees were forced to eat flour mixed with river water, which led to widespread dysentery. With nothing to eat or drink, groups within the settlers quickly formed and many lost their lives, either as a result of arguments over food and money or as a source of food. The bodies in possession of valuable items such as gold tooth fillings were looted often, and lack of proper food and the rising death count led to widespread cannibalism across the island by late May. The dire situation was finally ended by Soviet authorities in early June. The settlements were dissolved and the surviving 2,856 deportees were transferred to other smaller settlements upstream. In the 13 weeks since the plan was first put into motion, around 2,000 people died due to starvation, exposure, disease, someone else killing them, or accidental loss of life. A further 2,000 had disappeared and were also presumed to have died. Were left virtually unknown until 1988, during the Glasnost reforms, when an investigation by human rights group Memorial first made details of the affair available to the general public. However, the event did not become popularized until 14 years later when, in 2002, reports of the Special Commission Communist Party of Western Siberia were finally published by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. But what do you make of these spine-chilling islands? With Halloween approaching, many of us may be excited. However, some frightening things happen on or around Halloween, which makes these occurrences much more sinister and, strangely enough, unexpected. While we seek frightening films and decorate our homes and front yards with monstrous props in preparation for this holiday, always beware of this holiday and the possibilities of what could happen on this day. So today, here at Unexplained Mysteries, we'll be taking a look at 3 unsolved missing, all of which happened on Halloween. David Lawrence Stone was a 29-year-old stock market analyst from La Jolla, California. It is of note that he sought spiritual guidance through the New Age movement, a range of beliefs focusing on the mind, body, and spirit of its followers. This knowledge was a pointer that gave authorities more information when they later discovered his tracks through a desert in New Mexico and traces of related clues and hints that he may have intentionally left behind for them to find. Stone was known for having anger and control issues, and these problems became worse just 3 days before Halloween of 1988. After a significant outburst and loss of control, Stone told his family and friends that he needed some time away. The morning of that Halloween he drove off, not telling his close loved ones where exactly he was going. What happened next was determined by investigations and a report by Sheriff Bill Cavalier, the investigating officer in the case. It was said that Stone walked into a desert about 145 miles east of Tucson, Arizona, from where he just kept walking. He walked so far that he got from Arizona to New Mexico, where a farmer discovered him and approached him, surprised at seeing a walking tourist in such a far and rural area of New Mexico. When asked about the encounter later, the farmer told investigators that Stone told him he was looking for what he called the beast. Other locals and residents also noticed Stone, reporting that he had been walking alone, muttering to himself and acting extremely strange. Around the 5th of November, Stone's car was found abandoned along an empty stretch of the New Mexico Highway 80, south of Road Forks, New Mexico. Stone's family believed him to be on what is referred to by New Age members as a vision quest, a journey taken for one's self-discovery and understanding of him or herself. This belief was reiterated by many clues discovered later, thought to have been left behind deliberately by Stone. Symbols like that of pyramids and strange numbers were related to certain New Age beliefs. Searchers found a pyramid of rocks surrounded by a triangle besides a watch belonging to Stone and 2 quarters. Of an arch numbers, which are digits used often by stock market analysts, were found written in the sand. Notably, there was a mistake in the numbers. Stone had written 18 instead of 21, which some people thought hinted towards his jersey numbers from when he had played football in college. Although it was a mere coincidence that Stone disappeared on the day of Halloween, it still adds to the mystery and fear around this case. To this day, no one knows why he was acting so strangely, and what exactly happened. The case was unresolved until 4 years later in February of 1992, when it was discovered that Stone had passed away. His skeletal remains were recovered in a desert near Granite Gap, New Mexico, the same area where several clues were found years before. His identity was confirmed by medical records, and there was no medical evidence of foul play in his passing. To this day, no one knows when, how, or why Stone passed away. That part of this unfortunate case still remains a mystery. Cindy Song Pyongyong Cindy Song was a senior college student at Pennsylvania State University when she went missing. On Halloween of 2001, she attended a costume party with 2 of her friends dressed as a bunny. The 3 stayed at the party until 2 a.m., stopping at a friend's house to play video games before going home. At 4 a.m., Cindy's friends dropped her off at her apartment. She was never seen again after that. Upon conducting a search of her apartment, it was confirmed that there was no sign of forced entry or struggle. Her school backpack and mobile phone were all found in the apartment. Her purse containing credit cards and her driver's license, however, was missing. Police believed Song was still wearing her costume when she left the apartment because it too was not found. A phone analysis was conducted revealing no inbound or outbound calls, messages, or emails, adding to the confusion and lack of evidence leading to any suspects. Tickets to a concert and a printed receipt for a computer were both found in her apartment, providing evidence that she was making future plans that did not involve running away or disappearing. According to her friends and family, there was no evidence that Song was depressed, unhappy, or intending to run away. She was always considered upbeat, friendly, and outgoing, including on the night that she vanished. The surrounding wooded areas were also searched but revealed nothing linked to the case. It is thought that while on her way to a 24-hour supermarket, Song was abducted either on the way or at the location. Others believe that she may have left her apartment with someone close to her that she trusted and her life was taken. Adding to the mystery and confusion, a woman of a similar description was later seen being forced into a car by a man in Philadelphia 200 miles away from her apartment. It was reported that she was screaming and resisting, crying for help, but finding none. The man remains a possible suspect, although police do not know who he is. The man has still not been found. A few more suspects were discovered about 2 years later in 2003, including Hugo Solinsky. A co-defendant in his case told police that he and an accomplice, Michael Kakowski, had abducted and taken the life of a woman from Pennsylvania State College. that matched Song's description, although nothing was ever confirmed. The report led authorities to 5 bodies, which were all DNA tested for identification. None of them, however, were found to be Song. Even recently, in 2014, 7 more bodies were discovered on Zelensky's property. Again, authorities hoped that perhaps Song's body would be found and the case would be solved. However, her body was not one of those, and has still never been found. This case remains unsolved, as no new evidence has surfaced regarding what may have happened to Song after that Halloween night. Christy Lynn Vorik was living with a foster family in 1982, when on Halloween of that year she went missing. There was a reported sighting of her at a bus stop that evening in Seattle, Washington, but investigators were unable to confirm whether it was actually her. Vorik was a 13-year-old white female at the time of her disappearance. She was described as being 5 feet 3 inches and 110 pounds with brown hair and hazel eyes. In order to assist with finding her, age progression photographs were created to attempt to visualize what she might look at ages 29 and 43 if she was still alive. A distinguishing feature that was noted was the middle finger on her left hand, which was shorter than the rest as a result of a birth defect. Vorik's mother still believed her to be alive, although authorities were not convinced of this. It was believed instead that she may have been a victim of Gary Ridgway, also known as Green River, although this too was never confirmed. This is thought to be questionable as, unlike Ridgway's other victims, she was younger and not known to be a runaway. The only evidence that may have linked Vorik to the Green River is that she apparently roamed around the streets of Tacoma, near the area where many other young women were taken advantage of and where many lives were taken. Vorik was added to the list of his victims in May of 1993. This case, like the first 2, also remains unsolved. One can only hope that both Song and Vorik are somewhere safe and will be discovered eventually and return home to their families and friends. We can only hope that the perpetrators are discovered and brought to justice so that their families and friends can find resolution and peace. Halloween will never be the same for people close to tragedies such as these. It can indeed become a more frightening and daunting time and a reminder of bad events. Even for those not particularly close to the incidents, knowing about these and learning more brings a new perspective to this typically lighthearted, spooky season. But what do you make of these Halloween mysteries? Tom DeLonge has just replied to Elon Musk in a tweet regarding UFOs and alien life. The comment came after a tweet was directed towards Elon, which stated the following: "Humans want to know, has Earth been visited? Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, as Earth's great space explorer, is what you think. Have we been visited? We will discuss tomorrow." Elon then replied with the following: "I have seen no evidence of advanced civilizations visiting Earth. Fuzzy pics that are worse than a 7 to 11 security cam frame grab don't count." Tom DeLonge then jumped in on the conversation and said the following: "I think I should introduce Elon Musk to the people that run the DUAP task force, because the Office of the Undersecret Defense for the Intelligence of the Department of Defense have nothing better to do than create a task force that studies fuzzy videos." End quote. Many people hit back at these claims, saying how close-minded and ignorant Elon is being, with one person saying the following: "The whole argument around why there's no clear photographs with UFOs is a frustrating one. Take your iPhone camera, for example, and put it on maximum zoom and see what happens. It immediately goes fuzzy. Then try and take a photograph of something in the distance. Now imagine that object is moving in the sky. Now imagine you're in the car while this is happening. It's near impossible to get a clear photograph of anything under these circumstances." One of the things that many people don't seem to mention is that while camera quality in everyday phones has massively increased, they're only really good for up-close photographs. Anything that's over 10 meters away starts to get blurry. Also, the majority of people aren't expecting to see UFOs, so the whole encounter is rushed. People are normally doing everyday things and don't expect to see a UFO, so when it happens they just pull out their phones and try to take the best photo possible. It's not like people can walk around 24/7 with a tripod and a HD camera waiting for UFOs. End quote. While this person said this on a UFO group, What about the Tic Tac UFO that was captured a while back? That's our military openly talking about these objects, and you can hear how confused they are about it. Seems you're a man of science. Tell me how this object was able to go from 80,000 feet to sea level in less than a second. We have no technology that's able to do this, and if you're still making excuses at this point, you're just being ignorant. Even Harry Reid turned around and said that the government has been suppressing information about UFOs, and that more investigations need to happen. This is no longer a secret anymore. These officials have spent hundreds of millions of dollars looking into these graphs. And if they weren't real, why spend so much and set up so many top-secret programs? Stop looking at the world through a human lens and only applying human logic. The universe doesn't revolve around humans. With another person taking a different route and saying this, you're just saying that because you're not from Earth. It's important to remember, though, that people are just going by what the government has said. It's one of their astrophysicists who said that in March of this year, they had made retrievals of off-world vehicles not made on this Earth. This caused some to question what else could this possibly mean. And with all the talk about UFOs at the moment, it got people excited by the fact that the government is being more open about unidentified flying objects. The government's relationships with UFOs has been shady at best. For years they've claimed that we have no evidence of UFOs, that alleged crashes that have happened are just government property, and that the hundreds or thousands of UFO sightings and encounters can be easily explained, and that most of these are just military planes being misidentified. However, what 2020 has shown us is that the government is being more vocal about these mysterious crimes. Various documents have come to light that show us that actually the government has had a fascination with these crimes, just as much as the general public. In fact, they've documented various encounters with these unidentified flying objects, most of which happen when military crafts are patrolling the sky. One of the issues that people have picked up on is the confusion over whether the government is still investigating UFOs. The Pentagon stated that the program was discontinued, but recent news via a Senate committee report goes against this, and even states that they've just changed the program name to Unidentified Air Phenomenon Task Force. The discovery of off-world crafts is massive news and has caused some to speculate about what this means. Some think that this news now backs up what prominent figures like Papalarza has been saying for years, while others have said that within the next year the government will make a massive announcement in regards to UFOs. Others, though, have expressed that although it's great news that they're now being open, it's a shame that it's taken so long. For years, people who came forward with their encounters or reported seeing UFOs were ridiculed in the media. They were branded as being crazy or just straight out lying. Yet the very people who denied these claims were investigating these crafts the whole time. And not only that, but making significant findings to back up that these crafts are in fact genuine. This news comes not long after the Pentagon formally released 3 unclassified videos taken by Navy pilots. The mysterious video showing UFOs have been circulating for years. It's caused various theories to be put forward to try and explain them. However, for skeptics, they wouldn't believe the footage until the government came forward and announced they were real. This is what happened several months ago. As of right now, people are eagerly waiting for the government to release more information. It's amazing to think where these advanced crafts could have come from. But as some have pointed out, and the government has been researching this topic for decades, so perhaps they already know that answer. So my question to you guys is, what do you make of Elon's comments? Do you think he's being closed-minded? Or do you agree with him? Also, watch your thoughts on the recent comments from the US government announcing they've recovered off-world crafts.